Alright, so we got Julian Juicy J Rosa versus Nate the Trained Landwehr. So Julian will be the bigger guy in there. He's 6'1". He's got a 4-inch height advantage in this one. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage in this one. And we will break down the striker now. Alright, so Julian Rosa, he lately he's been coming in with a forward pressure, tends to keep his hands low. Nate pretty much does the same thing, keeps the hands pretty low and also comes in with that forward pressure and keeps the pressure on for the whole fight. Julian, he relies on head movement as his hands are low, so he's got to have some type of strike and defense, whereas Nate doesn't tend to move his head too often, kind of just stays in the center line and he becomes a bit of a target. He's quite hittable. For Julian Rosa, he can fight in either stance. He switches frequently, but generally the strike and defense has been the bane of his career. One of Nate's best punches, it's either the counter 2 or the counter uppercut. He tends to throw singular strikes as counters. So he'll wait till the opponent kind of close distance or they start rushing in. So you saw that in a lot in the Elkins fight when Elkins was trying to close the distance. Nate would kind of snipe him off with the straight right or the rear uppercut. So that's probably his best offense with his hands. For Julian Rosa, his punches are he kind of wings them, from his hips. He keeps his hands low and that's where he throws his punches from. But since he has really long arms and they're coming from the hips, his punches tend to come from really weird angles and angles that opponents just generally aren't familiar with and can often catch people with it. So, he was landing successfully on Julio Arce, who's a very talented boxer. And Julian Rosa was, landing a few shots on him just with these weird punches because Julio is used to more traditional stuff, probably in the gym, used to sparring with other boxing type guys, not used to these punches coming from weird angles with these long ass arms. In the grappling, generally with Nate, he'll get into a scramble, but generally he looks to stay on the feet. In a scramble, he'll look to attack a single leg, but generally he's looking to stay on the feet and just get back to his feet once he's been taken down. For Julian Rosa, he will go for a few takedowns of his own. He's got a nice body lock, gets in that body lock position. He's got very long arms, so he's able to use that as leverage in that body lock position. Also, if his opponent turtles up or, gets on all fours for whatever reason, he's a nice D'Arce choke. You saw that in his last fight versus Sean Woodson. I reckon he's got pretty underrated, submission game. He's got a bunch of submissions in his arsenal. You look at his record on Tapology or Sherdog or whatever, he's got a bunch of different submissions. Tends to threaten a lot of his opponents with submissions. I think he had Grant Dawson in a submission at one point that looked pretty deep. He tends to pull out, subs that people just aren't expecting. So how these guys win? For Julian Rosa, he's got good volume, keeps the volume up. He's got good pressure as well. He's very experienced. He's got 32 fights now. He knows when to put it on. He knows when to start turning it up when his opponent's kind of fading or whatever. But yeah, generally Nate won't fade. He doesn't have the best cardio, but he's good at pushing through fatigue. He's good at, keeping his posture up, having a good poker face. He's not generally showing that he's too fatigued, but you can tell he does get tired. And he never stops being aggressive, even when he is tired. Pretty much a lot of his what's the regional one he was on? I think it was M1. A lot of his M1 fights, he was getting dominated in a lot of those fights. Skill for skill, he was getting dominated. Taken down, controlled for the whole round, and then he comes back and gets a finish out of nowhere. And that's a lot of his M1 fights that I watched. He wasn't winning the whole fight. He wouldn't have won a decision or anything like that. But yeah. So it's hard to put away. He's hard to break mentally. But yeah, he's always in it. He's always dangerous. How these guys lose. So we'll stay with Nate, the Train. As we talked about before, his striking tendencies, he's very hittable, his hands away from his chin at all times, doesn't move his head at all. When it hits the mat, he can be easily controlled on the mat. He doesn't have the greatest get-ups. Also, taking him to the ground isn't too hard. He doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. For Julian Erosa, on the other hand, his striking defense has also been a problem in his career as well. Just the style of fight he likes to have. He's probably, I'd classify him as like a kill or be killed type fighter. He likes to get in the pocket, wing punches, just throw hands pretty much. And that can, he can live by the war or die by the war. So sometimes, yeah, he will get his bell rung and get finished. But he's always down for a war. And that's, it's not something you'd recommend if you were a coach, but that's just the style he likes to employ. Path to victory for these two. For Landwehr, Nate, throw some leg kicks. Julian's pretty heavy on that lead leg. If Julian's going to if Julian's going to chase you, throwing combinations and stuff like that, as he can do, he can get a little over aggressive with his, punches. Look for an uppercut when he's chasing you, because that's one of your best punches, the counter 4, the counter uppercut. For Julian Erosa, just keep the volume up, because Nate doesn't have the greatest volume, so just try and keep the volume up. Straighten up your punches if you can, just for this fight. I understand that he's unlikely to do that, but I reckon he'd have a lot of success if he started jabbing and 1-2 in Nate, because Nate doesn't move his head at all. But, he can still have success with the hooks and the style of punches that he throws, but I think he would have much more success if he straightened it up in this fight, particularly. Also, mix in your wrestling, make him think of something different. I think you might even have some success with your wrestling. If you go for that body lock takedown, I don't think you'll have too much resistance on the other end. Alright, so how I see this fight going? I'm interested to see who takes the first backward step, because both these guys like coming forward, like putting the pressure on. So, I'm interested to see that. In my opinion, I think it'll be Nate, just because Julian's going to be throwing combinations, he's going to be throwing teeps, he's going to be throwing a lot of stuff to push Nate back physically. And I think Nate will just eventually get into that rhythm, or the fight will get into that kind of rhythm that Nate will be on the back foot and Julian will be on the front foot throwing combinations and kind of keeping that for the whole fight, keeping that kind of vibe for the whole fight. So I think it will be, what have I written there? Yeah, so I think it will be a dogfight, but I think Erosa will be landing more. He'll also be on the front foot, as I talked about. Also, I think he'll have more success in the clinch, he'll have more success in the wrestling, so I think just everywhere pretty much Julian will have a bit more success than Nate. With that being said, it's hard to trust Julian with his kind of strike and defense, and probably wouldn't bet big on this fight. But yeah, Nate's strike and defense is honestly worse, in my opinion. Even though Julian Erosa doesn't have the greatest striking defense, I think Nate's is worse than his. So overall, I think Julian is going to kind of win every section of this fight and probably win a decision. I actually see him finishing Nate, actually. I see him TKOing Nate, or getting the submission. I see him finishing him somehow. But yeah, that's the prediction. Let's look at the betting lines. Alright, so we got a pick'em at the moment. I think Julian should be a tiny favourite, maybe to like $1.80. I think he wins this fight around 55 to 60% of the time. So I think he should be around $1.80, which I thought he was going to trend in that direction at the start, but he was the underdog at the start. But yeah, I couldn't bring myself to bet him just because I love watching him fight. Like he's really fun to watch, but it's just hard to bet on. But yeah, anything above a pick'em line, in my opinion, is value for a Rosa.